Alrighty, the hour is 3:30 and we can start with animations with auto layout and stack views. A little bit about myself. I'm an independent developer and author, and I split my time in between my own little studio for making iPhone apps and working on a website called rarewenlig.com. Woohoo! Where we write tutorials, write books, and so forth and so forth. It's really cool. And since in the beginning of this year, I published a book called iOS Animation by Tutorials, which is my fantastic book about animations on iOS. And I run an animations newsletter. It's a monthly newsletter on animations. I just do crazy stuff once a month and send it around for people who are interested in animations. And that's why I'm here today to talk about auto layout and stack views. And so we can get started. Animations are fantastic, especially in iOS 7 and iOS 8 and iOS 9. What's that? Because, well, we don't really have this rich user interfaces anymore that have all the wood background or all the steel, concrete, gutters and things like that I used to have in UI. So right now it's mostly text and text with color. So yeah, you have to find new ways to put your brand up in there in front of everyone and make your app distinguishable from other apps. And so, for example, this screenshot here could be one of the built-in apps eventually that comes with the iOS, or could be a custom app that somebody invested hundreds of hours into designing. But you can't really tell right away, right? Like, so it's really difficult. And if you could see how the UI interacts with the user and how the UI reacts to the user interaction and so forth, maybe there's a delightful, I don't know, maybe the handset is jumping a little bit when you press it, or maybe the word balloon just flies away when you tap it, or something like that. This is a really easy way to distinguish that somebody put a lot of effort into this app without having all the old-timer visual interfaces. But you can't really say that right away. And animations are really an amazing way to really make your app unique. This is the built-in contacts app in iOS. So, but you couldn't really tell, right? Like, it's just because it's really about white space, really about text. It's really about a color. And so animations are fantastic because if you have written ever an app on iOS, you have done at least one single animation because it's so easy, right? So this is how all animation tutorials start with a red square. Sometimes the square is blue, but it's mostly red. So, and then the square moves a little bit along, and then there's a single line of code, and people are really impressed, and they're like, yes, I can do animations on iOS because it's just one line of code. It's just animate with duration. You say how long you want the animation to go, and then there's a closure where you say, you know, like what kind of like the target, basically the final values for the animations are. And then this super smart UIKit API will take the current values. For example, in this particular animation, we'll take the current position of the red square, and we'll create a little animation over 1 second, and we'll move it to have basically on the x-axis the value of 200. So it will look something like this. Ta-da! Ready. So that's pretty cool. And so everybody knows how to do that on iOS. However, things change over time. So that was fantastic when iOS 3 was out, and that was fantastic when iOS 4 was out, and that was fantastic when iOS 5 was out. But then we started having different screens, like bigger screens, smaller screens, split screens, view controller containment, and things like that. So moving the red square to the point 200 on the x-axis didn't really mean so much anymore. Before having different screen sizes, it was pretty deterministic. You knew where the screen starts, 0.0, and then you moved it 200 points to the right. That was perfect. But now with 6 plus or 6 or 5s or whatever, you don't really know what does it mean to move to the point 200. It might be really close to the edge of the screen. It might be actually just straight in the center of the screen. It might be anything. And it really pains me. Sorry, it really pains me. Oh my God. Okay, emotional here. It really pains me where people have a problem of this sort and would run off right away to Stack Overflow and will say how to do this one animation thing in my app because I don't really get it. And people will say, oh yeah, sure, include this bloated framework by somebody and paste this code. And and then sure, accept it, it works. So, but that's really not, and that's really not the way. That's really, it hurts when you, but if you start arguing with people on this kind of websites, then it's even worse than just doing nothing. So it's always a question what to do. Well, anyways, you shouldn't do it. So my point is that it's better to understand how things work and why do they happen, because then you know what to do the next time you have a problem like that. And so let's get to the questions. Animations, why work? Well, they no work because auto layout is different than pre-auto layout. And what do I mean? Time for a quick demo. So the session is going to be basically less slides and more showing things on screen. So eventually and hopefully you will know how things work by the end and how to approach them. And so how to create animations with auto layout and further in the session with stack views. So here's my storyboard, and as its present day application, I'm using auto layout. Not really fitting into this kind of resolution, but still you can see most of it, which is enough. So what I have in here is it's a login screen for an imaginary app, and I have the username and the password fields here in the top because I have the idea to animate them kind of like towards the center of the screen when the user opens the app. And I have a little button here that says go, which will do the login, for example. All right, so I have laid out everything in Interface Builder. I've centered them, and then I put in some constraint here on the username and password, and that's pretty awesome. And then let's imagine I'm going to Stack Overflow, and I see there, I don't know, super awesome Ninja Dev has answered my question. Oh yeah, sure, just call UI animation with duration, and then just change the center property, and this kind of like should work. And so I go to my code here in View to Appear, where I'm gonna try what super awesome Ninja Dev recommended. So I'm gonna put in UI view animate with duration. Like so, I'm gonna say maybe half a second duration. And what I'm gonna do is I have two outlets here, username and password. I'm just gonna try to animate their kind of like center property. So password center Y. Maybe 200 points will be enough. And then because I already feel very advanced in animations, I'm gonna add a second one to animate also the username field, just with a little bit of delay afterwards. These are the standard built-in APIs, nothing really fancy happening here. Just running an animation on the username field. Okay, so self username center Y. Okay, real quick. One moves down, then the other one moves down, then it should look pretty awesome. And it does look pretty awesome. They're still not really visible because I made them a little bit not fully opaque. I'm gonna just make them opaque as well. Let's do also this. Alright, so you're happy, you're coding, everything is perfect. Oops. Okay, so I'm gonna also show them away. And now my transition is perfect. So auto layout is not really bothering me. I changed the center property. That's all pretty good. And then I run away to Stack Overflow, accept the answer from Super Awesome Ninja Dev. And then I'm like, okay, so now I have to do like the logging part of this. So when I try to enter the username, then we have this. Okay, so one more time. So there's the problem. As soon as I focus on the text field, everything jumps up. So we can see two things happening. First, the fields repositioned to where they were originally. And second, they did not fade out as they were originally, right? So they started from barely visible, and they're still fully opaque as I animated them to. So it looks like this change, like this animation here was reverted, but these two lines were not reverted. So that is because it's really important to understand what auto layout does. As the name suggests, it makes your layout automatically for you. So it kind of like takes care of your layout for you. And here you went over its head and changed the position of these views manually, and that was not really good. And you changed the alpha manually, and that was okay because the alpha is not really part of the layout. So it's not really positioning or sizing or anything. So first, kind of like morale of this talk is not everything changes with auto layout, right? So not everything about animation changes. It's not really a whole new world. Was it a brave new world? Yeah, so it's not really a brave new world. It is just about positioning and sizing because this is part of the layout. So if you animated the alpha, if you animated I don't know, background color or something like that, that's fine. That just still works in the old way. What does not work in the old way is changing the center manually. But you're saying, no, it kind of works. It does work. So it is not like it does not work. It's just that it doesn't really work forever, kind of. So, and this is the really important thing that I want you to understand in this talk. And then from then on, everything's going to be really easy. So, question is why they jump back like this when I tap into the text fields. So this is kind of like how, this is a really simplistic explanation of how auto layout works. So you have your views on a screen. There will be buttons, there will be labels, there will be images and things like that. And when you lay them down in Interface Builder and you set up your constraints, you're basically attaching a list of constraints on those views that pretty much explain the relationship between them, in between the views, and between the views and the container of your view controller, which on iPhone is usually the screen. So in the end, everything depends on the size of the screen. But for example, when the keyboard jumps up, or maybe when a call is incoming, then also the size of the container of the view controller changes as well. So, but let's not jump too far ahead. We have a list of constraints, and those constraints, if you go to the documentation, NS layout constraint just subclasses NS object. So it's not really any kind of like visual class. It's not really, I don't know, doesn't really have like this tremendous logic behind it. It's just a model. So it contains few properties that basically define an equation like that. So you can set rules like, okay, my button should be always centered, so should be always positioned in the middle of the, in the center of the width of the view control, or maybe this button should always have the same position as this other button, or something like that. And this is expressed in this equations. But what is important is that these constraints you design in Interface Builder are just models, just data objects that just contain few pieces of information. They don't really do anything with UIKit. I mean, they don't really draw anything. They don't really move your views or so. What moves your views is auto layout. So kind of like the abstract term for auto layout. It is basically, would be more precise to call it UIKit, but let's call it auto layout for this purpose. So when things need to appear on the screen, where things need to find where their spot is on the screen, auto layout grabs this list of constraints, solves them, so solves all the equations, and finds where all these views should appear on the screen. And what this produces is that it will change the center and the bounds of your views. Really, really simple. So takes all kind of like, if you look at the list that I have there, there's all kind of constraints. There's width, height, center X, margin Y, ratio between width and height, maybe vertical space and vertical to margins, and all kind of constraints. But when auto layout solves all these rules that you set up, what it ends up with is just changing the position of your views and their size. So this is all it does. All it does is just to change the size and the position. And of course, when it does that, this reflects in your views being repositioned, resized. And this is all layout does, and it's really crazy. So all it does is just to size and position your views. So now that we know this, things get interesting, because next thing to look at is, when does this happen? So why did the fields change position when I clicked into the text field? So auto layout basically reacts to internal and external changes to the layout. So internal changes will be if you change a constraint, or if you remove one of the constraints, or if you do something like from code, for example. And external changes can be, I don't know, if the user rotates the device, then also the size of the view controller changes. So that will be an external change. So auto layout only reacts to those. So when you load up, let's say that you push a view controller, and this will be like kind of like its life cycle. So when you push it, first happens load view, right? Like it loads the view from the storyboard. And at this time, auto layout needs to solve the layout so that it knows where to show things on screen. Pretty cool. So we do one pass, just like I showed you on the previous slide. It solves all your constraints and finds the position of all the views. And then nothing. So then it's like calmness. Nothing really much happens. So things just are positioned, they don't move, and here you can jump in and change their center with no problem. However, if you tap on a text field, for example, like I did, then the keyboard will pop up, and this will change the size of the view controller margins. So this will trigger another pass on the layout. And so auto layout will have the orientation change here, but same thing. Auto layout will get again the list of constraints, calculate them again based on the container size, and then we'll reposition them again. So if you changed yourself the frame or the center of the views, this change will be then reverted to what the constraints say that the position and size would be. So as said, this could be an orientation change. It will trigger a pass like that. Or a keyboard pops up. This will again trigger another pass on the layout. If you change yourself one of these existing constraints, that will trigger a pass. So basically, that's why this example worked with the fields going down, because load view has happened. So the app loaded the storyboard, it showed them where they were supposed to be. Then I animated them down myself. So this really doesn't really cause any problems. But then, since the margins changed when you pop up the keyboard, auto layout did another pass, recalculate all constraints, and since the constraint did not change, it just moved the fields back to where they were. So you kind of like can jump in between these and like do maybe some little adjustments to center or something like this, but then again, when anything changes, those will be overridden. So okay, what can we do to do proper animations? Well, we kind of like have to have a look at how does a normal animation look like. You change center or frame or something like that in your code, and that happens instantly, right? So as soon as you change the center of a view, it just appears in that spot. And then you call animate with duration, which is the normal API from UIKit. And then anything you do within the closure in here that I put in the yellow background on, all these changes you do are then animated. So the difference between these two lines of code is that one is in the animations closure and one is just not in an animations closure. So all changes you do from within the closure are animated. And basically, there's a list of the animatable properties, things like alpha, background color, position, size, and so forth, that you can change within the closure, and that will be automatically animated by UIKit. So this is what you hopefully have done before. What you can do though from auto layout is, you know how this works, right? Like we already said that this is the way that it works. And now we need to make the connection that a pass on the auto layout, it just takes all the constraints, recalculates them, and changes center and bounds. And center and bounds are animatable properties. So we're getting really close to what actually was happening before, is actually that what we need to do is change the constraints, and then from within the animation block, force a pass on the layout. So from within the animations block to say to auto layout, hey, take the list of all constraints, find where my views should appear now with these constraints, and then since auto layout only does change the position and the size of the views, and those are animatable, then this will happen in automated way. So your task is find constraints you want to change them as you want, and then from an animation block trigger a pass on the layout. So we established all this, but let me quickly show how also do it from code. This is my next example, just for showing constraints and how to animate them. I have it's a little app with a little list here. It's basically like a to-do app, and I'm having this top bar in here, which I wanna resize dynamically. And just to show you the premise, let me open the storyboard file. Okay, so it's really easy. There's one view on the top and one table view on the bottom, and the top view is just basically pinned to the top. The table view is pinned to the bottom, and then they're pinned to each other. And I have a height constraint on this one that says that it's going to be height 60 points. And this is my app running. So what I want to do here to show you how things work is I'm going to click on the plus button, and that will enlarge this top bar, and you will see more UI in there and so forth. So there's two ways to animate constraints. Both are very easy. So I'm going to start with the first one. So first one is when you want to change the constant of a constraint. So let me open the properties here. Okay, so here are all the constraints that are applied to my little bar here, but I'm really interested in the height. So the height is set to 60 points. And when you edit the constraint, you can see that it just says 60 points and that's it. So it's a hard set height. And I want to just change the constant to something else, to maybe the value of 200 or so, to just enlarge the top bar. And it's really easy to do that. So I knew which one constraint I want to animate. So I'm just going to go to my view controller, and I'm going to make an outlet. So actually, since constraints are something that you lay down in IB interface, like interface builder, then you can also make outlets to them, and then just use the outlet to access them in runtime. It's pretty simple. I'm going to put in an IB outlet called menu height maybe, and it's going to be of type NS layout constraint, like so. And then, like any other button view, text view, or whatever you're used to doing to be using by outlets, you can just go to the storyboard, where it is, find the height constraint. There it is. Come to the connections inspector. Oops, and then drag from new referencing outlet back to the view controller and connect your outlet like so to the constraint. So now your outlet actually points to the constraint, and you can access it at runtime. Really cool and really simple. And I think I'm not going to have time for everything that I had in mind, so I'm just going to skip through a few things. So this action is already connected to my plus button. So here I can just say menu height constant, which is the constant from interface builder, equals to something else. So I can just say equals to 100, like so. And what this will result in is basically, as soon as I click it, nothing much happens. That is not what I wanted. Maybe this is not good. Yeah, it looks like it's not right. Oh, true, it's not connected. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so as soon as I click it, then it just takes the new height in consideration. So I change the constraint. And this is a change that will not be undone just randomly, because now the constraint says that it's going to be this high. And but we want animations, right? So since we can control the constraint, now the animations are really easy to do. Just wrap it up in a animation with duration call. And it also can be a spring animation. Let's do that for fun. So I'm going to use a spring animation like so. This is the default UIKit API again. Nothing really crazy going on. Okay, so on my slide, what I said on my slide, and I'm going to stick to it, was change the constraints anywhere in code, and then force a pass on an auto layout from within the animation block, because actually the layout pass is the one that changes the center and the bounds and so forth. Changing the constraints doesn't do anything. It does not do anything. Having a pass on layout and layout changing center and bounds, this is what does something. So let's do exactly this. My constraint here is updated, and here from the animations block, I'm just going to say view layout if needed, which will force auto layout to immediately consider all constraints, and if anything changed, then recalculate everything and change the position and size of views. Okay, that's why it's called layout if needed, because maybe you didn't change anything, then it will not do anything. All right, so this time when I click it, then this change in the constraint is already animated. And what is really important here to note is that I don't animate anything on the table view, right? So I have only one line that changes the constraint on the top bar. I don't really tell the table view to do anything. But since the top view and the table view are pinned together, changing the height of the one also changes the height of the other. And I don't really do this explicitly. I just leave auto layout to solve all the rules that I laid down. And since the rules that I did was so that they stay together, that changes both. And also the changes to both are animated because you know, their bounds were changed from within the animation block. So pretty easy. This is really easy, and now you can do all kind of other stuff then further from here. But as long as you know why the animation works like that, then you're on a good way to understanding like how to do more complex stuff and so forth. Okay, the second thing I want to show about constraints is it is simply amazing when you have to change the constant on a constraint. So as what we had now, we had a hard set height of 60 points and we wanted to make it 200. And this is really easy like so. Hey, I want the constant to be this value. And then just trigger an animation, all is great. Problem is if you want to change the multiplier on a constraint. So if you say, I want to change also the multiplier to maybe 1.5 or whatever. Yeah, the thing is that the multiplier is read-only. So you can change constraints that are hard set values, but you cannot change constraints that say I want the view in the middle of the screen, or if I want the view in 1/3 height of the screen or something like that, because those constraints use multipliers and you can't really change them. So what should we do? Actually, the only way is to loop over all constraints, find the one you want to change, kill it, and then put in a new one on its place. Let's do that. So yeah, it's really easy. It's not a problem. As I said, both ways are really easy. Okay. So when I move, I want to move the title a little bit to the left or so when the menu opens. And this is great because the constraint that I'm going to be animating is called align center to X. And align center to X has a constant of 0 and multiplier of 1, and that positions it in the very center of the tab bar. And in Xcode 7, there is a new field here when you are editing your constraints called identifier. An identifier is just a way to give your constraint a name. And this property existed also in iOS 8, but Xcode 6 did not have this little text box. So if you're still using Xcode 6, everything I will say is valid. You will just need to use the user-defined runtime attributes to set identifier. So you will just have to say here identifier string and then set the identifier like this. But since Xcode 7 is now stable, I'm going to use the built-in box now. So again, this is still possible with Xcode 6, just you need to set an identifier in a different way. So identifier is just a way to give your constraint a name. And this is great because you can just loop over your constraints, check for the name, and then find the one that you want to kill. I'm going to call this center, and now I can find it and kill it. So if I do just a little print here, like so, and print all the constraints on my view, real quick, just to make sure everything works. When I click it, okay. Wow, that's ugly. Okay. Sorry. I'm just gonna write a for C in view constraints. Sorry. Okay, then print C like so. This should do it. Okay. So here are all the crazy kind of constraints that are defining my layout, and I'm just looking for the one I'm interested in. Too many constraints. Too many constraints. Okay. Let me do something else. Title label. Superview. This should give us only the constraint that concern us. Like, really? Okay. All right. The important thing is not to lose heart, to keep trying. Okay. So this will give us the constraints we are interested in. And then, you know, they all have this like little cryptic summary from Apple that tells us what these do. But you can notice that one of them just says center, and that's the one that I want to find and use. So this is really, really useful. So what I'm going to do is just say if the one that I'm currently looking at has the identifier of center, then just set its active property to false, which will remove it from the layout hierarchy and totally kill it. So if I click now, as you see, it moved to the side because there is no horizontal alignment anymore. So this constraint is totally not being considered anymore in the layout, and it just like loses its horizontal alignment, just woo to the side. Okay, and now it's as easy as just creating a new constraint and just setting any constraint you want from code. So I'm just going to do this real quick. So NC is going to be my new NS layout constraint. I'm going to use auto-completion for the 20 parameters that come in afterwards. So I want to apply this constraint on the label. Pretty nice. I'm going to change the center X constraint. Also pretty nice. I'm going to use an equal. So all of this is the code that actually Interface Builder writes for you when you create any constraint. So you can be only happy if you're using Interface Builder. So quickly going to recreate this one and just change the multiplier like so. So I'm going to say 0.5 maybe, just to move it a little bit to the right. So any constraint that you want to do and you've done many times in Interface Builder, you can also create from code like that. And so this new constraint, the only thing you have to do is set active to true, and that actually will force auto layout to consider it on the next pass and add it to the layout hierarchy, and that's it. So this one kills the old one, this one creates a new one, and this one says, okay, this new one should be considered in the layout. And yeah, that's all it takes to animate a constraint like this one. Sorry, to add it? No, no, wait. So I know, I see where the confusion comes from. I hate Apple for doing this. Usually in Coco, you have to set delegates. You have to build relationships and things like this, but not with this API. So with this API, so as long as you set active property on your constraint to false, next time auto layout does a pass, we'll say, huh, this constraint is not active. I don't need it. And we'll remove it from the list of constraints. And this will then the constraint will lose everyone who retains it and will be killed off. So this line here is the death sentence for this constraint. That's it for it. It's over. If you don't retain it in any other way, then it's over for it. And then the same thing when you're adding new constraints. This one creates an object that just hangs there like in the universe. And then when you set active, the next time auto layout does a pass, it will say, this is active, so it will add it to the list of constraints and this will retain it. And since the constraint already has an idea which are the two views that are concerned with it, that's everything you have to do. So this is the way to kill one, and this is the way to actually add one like that. And so this is pretty much all. There is an API that is a static method on NSLayout constraints where you can add basically a way to add more constraints at the same time. But what it does is just to go over all of them and set active to true. So that's it. And so when I click here now this one, then packing list moves to the right because I just increased the multiplier like so. So two very, very easy ways to to animate constraints, okay? It's very, very easy when you know how it works. So one was make an outlet, change the constant, all good. The other one was if you want to change the multiplier, you have to like remove this one and then animate add a new one. And then the most important one, call layout if needed from within an animation block. So really simple. This is everything that auto layout takes. And then all other animations you want to do, like alpha, color, tint, something like that, you can do this in the normal way. So it's pretty easy. But this year we have stack views. Stack views are, if you actually go to the Apple docs, you will see that Apple markets stack views as all layout without constraints. So so this is a way to create auto layout animations without actually even having to animate constraints. So that's pretty cool. And in all the time that I have left, if anyone would tip me how much time I have left. No? About how? 9 minutes. Perfect. Okay, so I'll skip the slides and straight to the other project. Do you guys want to see how stack views are animated? Okay, that's more yes than ums. Okay, so I have a third sample project here to show you how to do stack views. So so the premise is it's a little shop application. If you buy it from the App Store, it will show you the list of all books that are worked on that you can also buy, which is, I think, a big deal. So anyways, there's a list of books, and when you click on one, on the detail view controller, you will see the cover of the book and some details. And I'm going to quickly do that via stack views, just to show you how easy it is. All right, so my detail screen is totally empty, which is a good start. Okay, so what I want to have is a little bit of text, which will show the name of the book and the years of release and so forth. So I'm going to call this a title, one label like this, and then this one I'm going to call book title like so. And this one will be much bigger and with a fancier font. Wait, okay. No, too fancy. Here, okay. So I have two labels like this. And stack views are just a way to group views. So you have some views, you want to group them together forever. That's the way to go. And there's a new button in here in Xcode here, where there used to be So the fourth auto layout button nobody ever used, and they just killed it off and put this new one that hopefully everyone will use. So it's basically a little table with an arrow pointing down like that. So when you have the views that you want to group together, select it and just click this one, and then it puts them together in a little stack view now. So now they're basically in a little group like so. There's the outline, so there's a stack view, and then the two views are just sub-views of this one. And then the stack view is really nice because it can do crazy stuff. Okay, you can do crazy stuff like this. There's a property called axis, which basically defines whether the stack view is a horizontal stack or a vertical stack. And it's really easy to just click here and change it, like so. So this will arrange them now vertically. And if I click it back, it will arrange them again horizontally. It's pretty cool. And there's an alignment property, which you can change from top and align them all to the top of the content, or bottom, like this, or center, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to put a 10-point spacing between the two, so they will always have a little bit of spacing in between. So it's a really new and fancy way to lay down UI, which is crazy, because Android had this forever. Okay, so I'm going to have the title book and then just double this one and put in here year, like so. This will be book year, like so. So I have two of them now, which is a pretty good start, I would say. But I'm never interested in the case for them to be misaligned, basically. I'm never interested in the case, well, there will be like so on the screen. So I actually want to also kind of like stack them, but vertically so, because they would look like rows in a table maybe. That would be really cool. So I will just select the two stack views together like so, hit again this button, and then now Interface Builder group them together vertically. So I have two rows with a little bit of information in each. So I have a stack view of two stack views. And it's also pretty cool because now on the top stack view I can change vertical to horizontal, have them like this and like so. So this is always really cool, really fantastically amazing, I would say. So I have already outlets for this label, so I'm gonna just connect them quickly like so. And then I will add the image view for the cover of the book. So this one. I'm gonna drag it here, maybe put a placeholder image like so. Okay. And so what I'm gonna do now is I want to group all of these together vertically. So I'm gonna select the image view and the top stack view that I have right now, and again just press this button here to put them in a stack. And then now I have a table of few tables of few tables. And people who have ever done web design will say this is bad because we have divs now, but we don't have divs on iOS. Plus it works totally differently, so it's fine. The stack view doesn't do anything. The stack view does not do any bleep thing. That's it. The stack view only keeps reference to these views that are arranged in there and will take in consideration all the properties you said. Should it be vertical, should it be centered, should it be aligned, and so forth. And all it does is to manage the constraints for the arranged views. So you don't have to change the constraint of those views. It will just create the constraints for you so that they're aligned in the way you want them. Okay, let's connect this one and then let's move on to animations because we don't have any time. Okay, so I'm going to just align this in the center like so. And hopefully right now everything should work so we can also see some animations. Alrighty. Good. Not too good, but still you'll have to take it. Alright. So we have this that is already working, right? Like this is perfect because my stack view basically takes care of my layout. And if I rotate the phone, this is still pretty good because everything is still aligned in the way that I want it. But inevitably I noticed that vertical layout works really good on portrait but not as good in landscape. And this is where the superpower of stack views come into play. So I can say, okay, I want this the stack view that shows them to be vertically aligned is perfect, but I want to actually add a size class in here and say, no matter the width of the screen, in case that the height is really compact, so in case I'm in landscape, add a new setting. So, and the new setting will be horizontal. So this way, I will have a vertical stack view in portrait and a horizontal stack view in landscape. So let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. Sorry. Okay. So this is how the layout looks like, and when I rotate the simulator, just rotates like this and becomes a horizontal view, and which is really a fantastic way to solve device orientation changes, because to be fair, they're not really easy. So with auto layout, you really could not do this in any sensible way, instead of having separate constraints on all of your views. So this is really cool, and as you can see, the change to the orientation happens in the transition between a landscape and portrait, so it's also animated. And you can see that it just changes the constraints and position, so everything just falls into place real nice. So we created an animation that actually we did not write any code for. That was great. Okay, real quick, let me select this one and do the same thing. So I want to change the alignment based on whether we're looking in portrait or landscape. So I'm going to change the alignment to center in portrait and leading in landscape, just to show you how this looks like. Okay, so we start with this, and the texts here are centered because I said that in portrait I want center, and when I rotate, now they're aligned to the left side of this particular stack view. So your layout literally flows with any changes to the screen that you're doing, and it's so really easy to do, which is I personally think fantastic. And just, do I have still 1 minute? Okay, all right, because okay. All right, so one final demo, just one line of code to show you how to do this also from code, right? Because we did this from Interface Builder and it was fun, but I want to actually do an animation when I click on something. So I'm going to say view, add gesture recognizer, add a little tap recognizer like so, UI tap gesture recognizer, that will trigger a method like so, did tap. So here's my method called did tap, which is, so this one's going to do something real quick. IB outlet weak. I'm not even explaining anymore, just to be sure that they don't really pull me with a okay, I need to connect this one. Okay, so I made an outlet to the stack view. That's all you need to know. Okay, so I can access on my stack view, I can access a property called arranged subviews, which is all the subviews that the stack view has arranged. And then I can say the last one I need to access, and I want to set its property to hidden, or actually just to toggle this property like so. Yep. Okay, so anytime I click on the view controller, it will set hidden on this one view. We'll just toggle it, and this is fantastic for showing menus that fall down from somewhere. If they were hidden before and just show them, they can just show up like this and rearrange your layout to fit in, and this is really great. And you can do this also from a animation with duration call like so. Okay, animations. Okay, and that will really be the last for me. As I usually say, yeah, thank you, that was great. As I usually say, you have to stop me because I can talk about animations till April. Okay, so now, since I wrapped this one line in a animations call, then this is also an animated thing. So any property you change on your stack view can be animated because the stack view only changes constraints, and constraints only change position and size, which are animatable. So everything works from stack views. That's it. I promise. That's all of it. There it is. The way to get in contact with me is my page where all my contacts are. It's called underplot.com, like the word underplot. I'm one of the last people who grabbed the word.com domain. That was pretty cool. So underplot.com. And don't forget to rate the session. That would be very, very nice of you. That's it from me. Thank you so much.